So research tells us that we all have a style that we like to work in. So one model is that the visual, auditory, kinesthetic model. So 1/3 of us prefer visual mode, 1/3 of us prefer the auditory mode, that is we like to hear things and we like to talk. And 1/3 of us prefer the kinesthetic mode, that is we like to experience things, we like to touch, we like to feel, we like to move around. So this typical meeting, well, what is it? It's a talk fest. It's dominated by the auditory mode. So what do you think that does to the kinesthetic people in the room? Well, they are listening to someone drone on and on and on, and they're probably disengaged, they're probably bored, and their input is diminished. So 1/3 of people, their input is diminished already. What about the visual people? Well, you might be fancy like me and do a good PowerPoint presentation, and you might engage a few of those visual people, but the other ones, they're disengaged, and their input is diminished as well. What about the auditory people? Well, they love it. This is their mode, so they like to work in these sorts of meetings. Let's look at a different dimension. What about introversion versus extroversion, one that's close to my heart? Half the people in the room are introverts. Do you think they're at their best in a meeting like this? No, their input is diminished. What about creative types versus the analytical types? I would argue that business and these meetings are skewed more towards the analytical types. So facts, figures, proof, data, dollars. Where does that leave the creative types? Well, their input is diminished. So what are we left with? We're left with these two dudes. And we all know who they are. They're the analytical extroverts that like to talk. They dominate the conversation, and their solution is the one that gets implemented. You're laughing because you've all experienced it. You could probably put a name to that face. So you would think that ideas and solutions in an environment like this, it would be like a survival of the fittest, but it's not. It's a survival of the loudest. And our solutions are just a shadow of what they could be. So let's leave that meeting. It's a bit depressing, I know. Let's leave it. The reason you come to Real Big Things is to get away from meetings like that. So there has to be a better way to do it right. There has to be an answer, and there is. And the answer is in a very unusual spot. So the answer is to use the most creative tool that humans have ever invented. The answer is the Lego brick. And you're like, whoa, Michael. So what do? Do we just put a pile of Lego in front of people and good things happen? No, that's not what I'm saying. You're probably thinking, yeah, I know this story. We do a team building Lego day and we all feel good. No, I'm not talking about that either. What I'm talking about is taking this most creative of tools, combining it with structure and process to improve our meeting outcomes. That structure and process is called Lego Serious Play. Now, Lego Serious Play was a method developed by Lego to run strategy meetings, to do better with their strategy. So they were looking to bypass that presentation, PowerPoint, spreadsheet-driven strategy meeting that almost sent them under back in the early 2000s. Now, it's used much more widely now beyond Lego, and it's used for much more than just strategy. And I want to show you a couple of examples of how it's being used. So for this team here, they had a problem of identity. So they were a new team that was being placed within a large Australian organisation from the outside. They were coming in. They needed to know their roles within the team. They needed to know where they fit within the organisation. They needed to know how to work and how to succeed. So using Lego Serious Play, a facilitator asked a question, and it was, what do you bring to the team? Now, each individual built a model, a Lego model, of what they brought to the team. They spent 5 minutes doing that, and afterwards, they shared the story of that model to the wider group. The model plus the story was the answer to the question of what they brought to the team. And here's an example that someone built. So I remember this story. This guy he was an innovation expert. He was actually the person down the bottom there, and that white column with the green grass, that was the ideas, the innovative processes that he was bringing to the team. And you'll notice that it's connected to all these other people. So he used that to connect people. You'll also notice that it's raised up from the ground level. So those bricks down the bottom, the net, the gears, that was the mundane, task-driven workday that they were normally involved with. And through his innovation processes and ideas, he would raise people up. He would connect them and he'd raise them. And you notice we're not building castles and pirate ships here. We're building using metaphor. So some of the concepts there, quite complex. Connection, ideas, lifting people up. So people shared their stories, and then we did more rounds of these. So the facilitator asked another question was, what do you want team life to be in the future? And this is a model that someone built. So we did more and more of these questions, more and more targeted to what we were after. They use some more advanced techniques, so they got building models together. And what the result was, a team that understood what their roles were, where they fit in within this organisation, and how to succeed. So what was the feedback from a session like this? So we asked a lot of questions, and sure, we asked questions like, is it enjoyable? Was it memorable? And you would expect that from a Lego day. But we also asked things like how creative that you felt. Did it achieve the objective for the day? And 4s and 5s all around. I challenge you to think of a meeting that you could poll someone coming out and get 4s and 5s from your average meeting. And lest you think all these numbers were just because it was a fun Lego day, we checked in with this group a year later. And we found that not only were they successful, but they were referencing the concepts and ideas that were coming out of that workshop over a year ago. And they wanted to do more. They wanted to dive deeper into that. So this was just one example. This was an example of a problem of identity. But there are other problems. So this next photo shows a problem of vision, a problem of direction. So a small company wanted to create a vision, and they wanted to understand where they were and where they needed to head off to. The next photo shows a problem of empathy. So this was a project team that wanted to understand a client's needs and expectations. I'll let you interpret that as you will. The last photo shows a problem of innovation. So this was the barriers that this organisation was facing to innovation. All right, so let's go from Lego back to that meeting that we talked about at the start. And let's bring in a bit of Lego Serious Play to see what it's like. So the creative types, they're now involved, engaged, and they're contributing. So they're back in the game. The introverts, they're getting their ideas heard, and so they are now contributing. The auditory people, there's lots of stories, they're listening, they're talking, so they're still involved. We've got the visual people can see the conversation right there. We've got the kinesthetic people who have actually built the solution with their hands. So suddenly we've gone from a meeting where it was dominated by those two dudes to a meeting where everyone is contributing and the solution is richer for it. And isn't that why we get these groups together in the first place? To get everyone contributing and get a better solution. So I want to finish off with 2 little activities. One you can do today and one that you can do at home. Now, we can't go by a Lego talk without playing with some Lego. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go all Oprah on you, and I'm going to ask you to look under your seat. So look under your seat, and you might be lucky enough to find a gift under there. Some of you are like, no, where is it? Now, it's not a car, unfortunately. The budget didn't stretch to a car. But what you'll have is you will have 6 Lego bricks. And what I want you to do, I want you to take those Lego bricks out of your bag, and I want you to start playing with them. And I want you to put them together, and I want you to have a think about how many different ways you can put those 6 bricks together. So think about how many different ways that you can put those 6 bricks together. Have a bit of a play, have a bit of a think. I want you to have a guess, and then I want you to turn to the person next to you, and I want you to share that guess with them. And I'll give you a moment to do that now. Have a play, have a guess, and share that with the person next to you. All right. Has everyone got a number? Everyone got a guess of how many different ways you can combine these 6 bricks? Anyone want to yell out an answer? 260? 30,000? I feel like I'm on an auction here. Anything else? No? All right. Well, I'll tell you what the number is. The number of ways that you can combine those bricks is actually 915,103,765 different ways, just those 6 bricks. It's almost 1 billion. Now imagine going into a meeting room and seeing this. That's not just 6 bricks, that's a whole pile of Lego. And it's not just those plain bricks, but all the different types of Lego that you can have. So now you'll start to understand the possibilities for expressing ideas, experiences, solutions. It's limitless what we can do. I want to finish up on one last activity that you can do at home. So because it's the weekend, I want you to go home and I want you to talk to your partner, and I want you to say to them that you've found a legitimate way to use Lego at work, and see what their response is. Maybe get your kids involved as well. Then what I want you to do is I want you to find some Lego. So you can either steal your kids' Lego, or if you want to, raid your own stash. And what I want you to do is I want you to build a model that represents what you want to do in life. So build a model to represent what you want to do in life. Maybe get your partner there as well, and maybe get your kids. And you might find the answers